Wow. Looks like The Rock is really going for that Oscar.
Probably looking at my eyes.
How did that happen?
Well, have you ever heard of the Ultimate Fighting Championship, the UFC?
That's the bloody thing they're trying to ban.
This guy is the best he has ever seen.
Do you hate each other when you fight?
Absolutely not.
So The Smashing Machine. This tells the story of Mark Kerr, which is a real-life MMA legend, who basically helped put mixed martial arts on the map. His rise is very well known in the sport, and he came from wrestling, jumped into MMA early when the sport was just getting to be known around the world, and he quickly rose to the top. He was using these type of wrestling techniques, wrestling and grappling skills, to literally pin down his opponents to the ground and then punch them until they couldn't move. So hence why his name of The Smashing Machine. Now, if you want the full background of who he actually is, there's a good documentary on HBO called The Smashing Machine. It's from about 2002, but tells his whole story, the real Mark Kerr, really well. And that is a much more, just shows you the truth and actually looks a little bit at what the sport is and the sacrifices the athletes make for this MMA championship. The film itself drops us in the middle of, well, when Kerr is at the peak of his career and the sport is sort of in his early days, its early brutal days. And I mean by brutal, these are like no rules, free for all, kicks to the face, knees to the head, elbows, headbutts, anything went. It was a free for all essentially, and like a jungle, to be honest. And fighters usually left ring either unconscious or bleeding heavily. So Dwayne Johnson plays Mark Kerr, and the film instead tries to focus on both his personal life and his professional life and how one constantly affected the other. Now, Kerr's influence on MMA was pretty big anyway, so without giving too much away, his rise and fall actually pushed the sport towards becoming a bit more safer and more structured. Now, the film itself is very well put together. It's directed and written by Benny Safdie, and he does a great job at giving the character space to breathe. He doesn't over-direct or over-edit. Sometimes when you have such an opportunity to do action, some directors go crazy with the editing and don't, lose focus. So I appreciated the fact that it sits with these two characters and mostly with Mark Kerr's character. It focuses more on the characters than the punches in the ring. But where it stumbles a little bit is the writing, because it feels a little bit disjointed. So there's a lot going on in Kerr's story. He has, mental health problems. His relationship with his partner, Dawn, which is played by emilyblunt, was also very, very, eventful. His bond with he's almost like a brotherly bond with the other fighter, Mark Coleman, played by Ryan Bader here, is also very good. The brutal reality of these fighters relying on painkillers just to keep going is another great storyline. These are all storylines individually that are very strong, but the film tries to juggle all of them and doesn't really fully commit to only one. Either of them would have worked, to be honest, but this way everything feels half-baked. The film never really quite lands on what it really wants to say. For example, this relationship between Kerr and Dawn, which takes up a really big chunk of the film, feels unfinished, is not rushed, just like unresolved. Especially if you know the story of Kerr in real life, you would know how she was with him, but that doesn't fully feel resolved in this film. Or his mental health issues, and his obsession with winning. This is another good storyline that is touched on but not fully explored. So it's like the film puts a lot on the table but doesn't quite finish the meal, and it feels a little bit of a miscalculation there. Now, the acting, solid. Emilyblunt is fantastic, but that's no surprise. Dwayne Johnson, yes, he does a good job. He does a good job, honestly. He's not quite there with the heavyweights like Joaquin Phoenix. But maybe he will get there. He's got a big project with Martin Scorsese they're going to do a crime drama in Hawaii. Maybe that will push him further. The thing is, with somebody like him, he's got this image of an action figure, and he's so established that it's really hard to separate the actor from the icon. You know, he's also his big figure, and this chunk of a man is also distracting. You know, so it's almost like he has to do double the work as an actor in order to make the audience move away from looking at how massive he is. But I think he has the potential, because I remember I've seen a film back in the day before he was this famous. It was a follow-up of the classic Get Shorty with John Travolta. The film is 2005. Yeah, it's called Be Cool. It's from 2005, and he has a small role in there, but he was funny and he was natural. So he definitely has the flame. He just needs to fuel the fire a little bit more. Overall, the film, this lack of direction can be distracting. So is it worth the ticket price? Probably not. You know, this one's going to be fine to watch on a streaming service when it hits the streaming service. It's a decent film, very well done, and it's decent acting. But honestly, because the story just goes everywhere, it sadly lands in the forgettable category. See you next time.